I can post it, and anyone wants to look at it again. So um, hopefully more people are coming. All right, guys, just to start with, let me share my computer. I just want to bring this up a little bit. I know it's not the most exciting thing, but I don't know if you read the president's email this morning, but we went from basically 5 cases to 21 in a couple days, right? You guys know about this? So we have to keep diligent about this. In fact, one of my students, not in this class, but one of my students has tested positive, and now I have to get tested too. So I mean, I haven't been in close proximity with him at all, so I imagine I'm completely fine. But 21 cases. There are lots. I mean, there are whole dorms getting tested now. I heard too. They're kind of stepping things up a little bit. Is that true?
No.
No?
We have COVID in my building and they didn't tell us or test us.
Yeah, they are doing that now though, apparently, or at least people in close proximity. That's the plan. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I know that some students are going to be late because they're being tested. So, but just, I don't know, I know things have been going really well, and honestly 21 cases still isn't very much, but that could easily get way out of hand real fast. Obviously, we don't stick to the plan and be diligent about it. So just thought I'd mention it. Anyway, so rolling out 2 weeks of testing, 2-week testing for all students and staff. Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not. Is that what the president's email, I don't know if it mentioned everyone getting tested. It just said they were stepping up testing. And I think it's related to specifically areas where people have, come down with it. So, yeah, anyway, so, just obviously, I just wanted to bring it up in case you hadn't read the president's email or seen the spike that we had this weekend. So, all right, so today I am talking about, so just to give you a heads up of where we're headed. I know you've probably seen lots of posts today from Google Classroom, right? So I posted today's Zoom, what we're talking about, effects plugins, we're talking about IO configurations and clipping. And then for Wednesday, obviously we're in the lab talking about reverb and delay. I am also going to be posting, probably tomorrow morning, I'm going to make a video about reverb and delay. And your next 2, what's it called? So your next 2 daily 10s will be about that video. So you need to watch my video. That's basically your other lesson this week is about reverb and delay. And then obviously we put these things to work on Wednesday and Friday in the classroom. Also, you can see I'm trying to start to use cute little icons so you recognize things right away. Every daily 10 will have a little 4-leaf clover on there. Every homework assignment will have the little yellow triangle. Okay, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, am I? Let me do that.
Nope.
So if you go to Google Classroom, you'll see every daily 10 has this little 4-leaf clover, and then there's obviously the homeworks have the triangle. So please, some of you are asking a lot of questions, and that's totally fine, but you can always, I'm trying to be very clear and organized, which I have to say is not in my nature at all. So just take a look, if you have a question about when something's due, you can see that this Monday, this is due, oh, that's supposed to be today, but it's supposed to be due today by midnight. Well, I can't, hold on. So yeah, so you can always see when your assignments are due in Google Classroom, right? Do you guys get any sort of email notifications about when stuff's due too, or no?
Yep.
You do? That's good. Okay. So, okay, anyway, so just, and I've already posted assignment 2. I'm going to start talking about this today. So, and that will be due on Sunday. So you have a whole week basically to do that by midnight, okay? All right, so let's talk about a couple of things. I had a couple of students upload already, and actually I've already talked with some of them about their projects. So I have an example here of a good project. Brad here, who's actually one of our students online, sent me his entire Logic project because I thought this was a really good example of things, of a basic mix, okay? So I wanted to talk about this because it's really relevant for what we're doing, and obviously, hopefully, it gives you guys a, you know, and I definitely have gotten a few emails saying, I don't know what to do with this project. I think it sounds terrible. It's boring, blah, blah, blah. So hopefully this will give you a sense of like what is interesting and how to make something interesting in Logic, okay? So let me just make sure the audio is gonna work here correctly. Nope. So my output, let me just switch this. Hopefully you'll hear this out your speakers in full audio. Okay, did everybody hear that? You did hear that, right? Okay, good. So anyways, so this is, you know, a great example there of just, you know, a lot of repetition, right? You can see that he's using a lot of these tracks more than once. And, you know, I really like the labels on the tracks. It's really useful. I feel like all you have to do is double click on this to change the type, the name. It can be really useful for you too, because obviously the more tracks you get, the more you have to manage all these outputs. And so labeling them just streamlines things so you know what's what, okay? Anyway, so really good stuff here and a lot of good things to talk about. One of the good things to talk about is how loud the outputs are. So if you'll notice, some of these outputs, you know, there's a nice good signal on everything. So I don't have audio files, for example, like this is one of the quieter ones, but you know, what we don't want is things like a gain that looks, you know, like this, all right, where you barely have a signal, it's really quiet. So we kind of want to find, obviously, a middle ground with this. And in Logic, actually, there's a lot of great tools for this, so you can edit how loud things are. But this is a nice, really healthy signal, right, which is useful. It's good to have good, healthy signals in your recordings. And again, you always want to start with the best recordings you can get. And so managing that output is really important. Now, Brad, I hope you don't mind me being critical a little bit, partly because just everyone is doing the same problems. And I appreciate your example of some things end up a little too clipped, right? So actually, this actually looks okay in here, so it's fine. But what we don't want to see, what you don't want in your recordings, which is called clipping, okay? And that looks something like this, where, and your daily 10 question came up about this, where I said, you know, what is clipping? And clipping is actually when the maximum possible volume has been exceeded, okay? And clipping can happen in all sorts of situations. When something is recorded too loudly, when something is mixed too loudly, when sounds are put together that are too loud and they come together and then make a really loud signal, okay? So clipping is something we want to generally avoid, all right? And let me explain it this way too. In Logic, if you, for instance, had, say you had 10 different sounds at once, all right? You'll hear me talk about this all the time with sound too. I'm constantly comparing it to cooking. If you take a bunch of ingredients and pour them into a bowl, right? Eventually, the more ingredients you add, that bowl will overflow. And when that bowl overflows in audio, it's called clipping, and the sound is too loud. So if you take two sounds that are really loud and play them at the same time, they will clip in the DAW, okay? Which is in Logic or Pro Tools or whatever. So you have to constantly, you know, if you think about it, if I'm writing a piece of music, if I'm cooking something, if I have a bowl of ingredients, the more I add, if I want to keep the balance the same, like I want as much flour as I want sugar, what I have to do is lower the volume or the ingredients of everything to keep the balance the same, but to manage how much of it there is, okay? And the way I do that is this. So here's a good example. Let's go back to Brad's project here. So he has some clipping, but I can make some really nasty clipping by copying this. So here's a really nice fat signal, right? This new recording here. I don't know what this is. Looks like it's an ice machine, right? So if I play these two sounds together, you can see every time, because these sounds are both loud, when they play together, they're going to clip. They're going to exceed the maximum possible decibels, all right? And you can see that here, down here in Logic. Oh, I forgot my zooming doesn't work, does it? So see down here in Logic where it says 4.3 in red. Yeah, does everybody see that? So the 4.3 in red means that the peak level of all the sounds together is too loud, okay? And when all the sounds together is too loud, we're going to see that red clip, and it basically means we've overflowed the bowl, right? There's too much stuff, and it's going to overflow. Now, what happens if there's too much of the sound? Anyone tell me? What is going to be the result of clipping? This is called clipping. Any idea?
Signal drop.
It can drop?
Yeah, it can stop output.
Yeah, that actually doesn't happen that often. More commonly with that is because it's related to how many audio files you have going on at once or something. What will happen is the sound will reflect back into the channel basically and cause what's called distortion, okay? So listen to what happens when I play these two together. I'm turning the volume down a little bit. You're gonna see the main stereo output here clip. You're gonna see this red box. So let me actually just go there here. So I'm gonna start here. So see this big red 5.1, right? That's because the collective sound of all of these tracks together, and in particular this one moment where these two loud tracks play at the same time, is clipping, okay? So this is something you need to manage in your projects. And the best way to manage it is actually with the main volume controller, all right? So imagine Brad really likes this mix. He likes the way it sounds, the way it is, right? The balance is good. I like the intensity of all my sounds. They sound in a good balance. But again, the problem is it's clipping. And if we look at this track, if we watch the track, you will see it clipping. Down here, this little, because, man, I wish I could zoom in because it's so effective. You can't see my zooming, right? You're not seeing any zooming when I do this?
No.
They need to fix that in Zoom. Anyway, so down here where it says stereo output, as you know, we talked about this in class, the left channel here is the actual channel I'm on. See, it says shaking seasoning, and then down here it says shaking seasoning at the bottom left, right? The next to it, it says stereo output. The stereo output is the collective sound of all the tracks together, right? It's the main outs. So if we watch this clipping, first of all, we don't want clipping in any individual channel, and we also don't want the collective sound to be clipping, okay? And so watch when we listen to this again. You're gonna see this peak sometimes, not that often, but it does peak. And peaking means that I get into the red in this box right here, right? And in fact, it doesn't even matter if I get a little bit of red in the meter here. What matters is if this red box peaks. So this is fine. Okay, so now you're seeing the 4, right? That means that the sound has actually exceeded the maximum possible dB by 4 decibels. And what's funny is that we don't actually hear this. We only would hear it if we mixed down the track. But it's something we need to avoid, okay? So if Brad does like this mix, like the way it is, the best way to do this is to take all of these tracks and highlight all of them. And I do that by shift clicking to the bottom. And then look, if I grab the volume, notice that all the volume knobs are moving at the same time, okay? So what I can do is I can adjust the main outputs so that everything is a little bit quieter, but the volumes are all the same in terms of the way they were, their ratios are identical, right? I'm not changing how loud they are against each other, just the overall volume. So let's go back to this spot now. Okay, so now we've actually avoided. We don't see clipping anymore. We don't get the +4 in this box, okay? But we've also managed to avoid that. Now, one thing, your tendency is gonna be to do this, just turn it way down, okay? But we also don't want a not very strong signal, okay? We want a good, healthy signal. So it's important that you find that happy medium where the volume is loud enough, but it's not too loud, right? It's like my soup. I like it hot, but not too hot, yeah? So that's exactly what you're trying to do when you manage your main outputs, okay? Any questions about that? So remember, you know, if you have a couple of quieter sounds, the quieter sounds will interact with each other less, or they won't cause as much clipping because it's like taking 1 teaspoon of flour and 1 teaspoon of sugar and putting them in a bowl, right? But if I have a small bowl, and I put 5 cups of flour and 5 cups of sugar, it's probably going to overflow, right? So that's what happens when you have intense sounds layered on top of each other. So it's something you guys need to manage for your next assignment. You need to manage the outputs to make sure you don't see the clipping in this red box right here, okay? Now remember, it's totally fine to see a little bit of red down here in the meter, right? The meter doesn't matter. What matters is that this red box then pops up red, okay? So that is just basically managing the main outputs of your volumes, okay? I can also go to the mixer window if I want. So if I go up here to window, I can go to open mixer, and that actually opens up your classic channel strip mixer, which shows me all the meters at once and is kind of, you know, I can kind of see the overall blend. The one I'm going to mix though is the stereo output, not the master. This is actually just a volume controller, okay, really. So it's this stereo output that I want to manage, okay. Anyway, so any questions about that? So that's what I want you to think about for your next assignment, all right? So your next assignment is to actually do a 1-minute project now, but you're also allowed to use sounds from the internet, okay? So you can go and download things and use them. Now I have some rules about these things that I'm pretty strict about, and if you break the rules, I'll just let you know that I don't want you to use these things. So I just want to talk a little bit about using first of all, other people's work, okay? Now, music is such a weird world in that there is so much borrowing and sampling going on all the time, right? It happens everywhere in music. And I understand that that's part of the world, but right now we're learning about a program and we're learning how to use it. And so what I don't want is for people to go and be downloading drum beats and melodies and stuff. I want you to try and use your own creativity to make your own stuff, okay? And that happens in some ways. So let me point you to an example. On our assignment here, I posted a link to what's called freesound.org, okay? Now, freesound.org is a great website for, why can't I go there? Go there. I posted it, freesound.org. It's a great website for just random sounds, okay? So if you want to find like a humpback whale, you can look in here and try and find one, okay? So now remember, this is user generated. So this entire thing is based off of users posting stuff. So you just need to listen to these. Some of them are not whales, right? That one might be. Some of them are actually people like making a piece of music or using a synthesizer and calling it humpback whale, right? So you just need to listen to these. And the way you would, of course, use them is that you just see, now this is probably something. So these are humpback whale sounds, but they've clearly been edited and manipulated in some way. If I want to download these and use them, I have to log in, okay? And the login is, stupid user interface here. The login is right here, Oswego_music, and the password is the same, Oswego_music, okay? So if you want to download sounds and use them in your project for your next assignment, I really recommend that. In fact, I do want you to use internet sources for sounds, okay? Now, what I don't want is you to go and download Trap Beat, okay? Okay. So let me just talk about this a little bit. Obviously, this is a drum beat that's someone made, right? And you're completely fine to download individual drum sounds. So if I wanted to trap snare, okay, it's totally fine to download individual sounds and make your own drum beats with them. But what I don't want in the class is for you to go and download drum beats and use them, okay? Now, I know a lot of you, I get this all the time from students that, oh, I'm a composer, I write music, and really what they're doing is arranging someone else's music, right? Because they're taking all these little segments of sound that someone else made, and they're putting them together as a piece and then saying, I wrote this. Well, not really. It's hard to write drum beats. It's hard to write melodies. It's hard to write rhythm. And, saying you compose something, I would say you're the arranger. You might be the, you're the Mad Lib creator. But and the thing is, once you're done with my class, you can do whatever the hell you want. But in my class, I want you to write your own drum beats, write your own melodies, use your own, that's kind of what I expect I want original work, okay? I don't want one second. I don't want to have to give half of the credit for your homework assignment to Alexandro_1, right? Because Alexandro wrote the drum beat and you used it. So any questions, just ask me. I'm totally, yeah.
Yeah, no, because we got one in the chat, which is, can we use the loops in Logic?
So that's another thing. Yes, there's also the loops in Logic, which honestly exasperate me to no end. The answer is no, I don't want you to use them, okay? Because it's the same problem. Like, I'm not interested in what Logic can write or that Apple Inc. can make drum beats. I want to know what you can do, right? And again, remember, in this class, I'm never judging you or grading you on a bad drum beat, ever, okay? So your grade is never based on your quality of record compositions. It's based on mostly following the directions, right? So I just want you to be aware of that. And I will show you in Logic. So someone asked about Logic's loops. It's fascinating to me that we have this in music. I mean, here's my example. Can you imagine taking a class in poetry, and your assignment is to write a poem, and you can't come up with any good ideas, so you're like, you know what, I'm just going to use Walt Whitman and take some lines from it and line them up and then say it's my poem. I mean, what would happen if you did that?
That's plagiarism.
Right, that would be considered plagiarism, right? But in music, it happens all the time, right? It's like we just take drum beats and we say, oh, this is my music. And there's a whole industry of loops and shit that people have made. I mean, literally, there are hundreds and thousands of loops that you can download and construct pieces with, right? And it's funny because in the musical world, there's kind of this acceptance of just borrowing freely at will, right? But it's important to remember, when Jay-Z or whoever your favorite rapper is sampling a drum beat, he's doing it within the context of kind of the culture of music and musical borrowing. He's not doing it because he can't do it himself, right? So I really, just keep that in mind. Like, what I want from you is original work, and I expect that from you. So just stay away from the Apple loops and stay away from constructed melodies, okay? You're fine to use any sound you want and to make a melody with any sound and to construct a drum beat out of actual individual sounds. But what I don't want is a prefab drum beat in your pieces. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I have a question myself. For those of us who can, is it all right if we use like the MIDI software instruments to like write out actual like parts and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely.
those-
Yeah. We're going to get into software instruments next week, and you can use the presets all day. Okay. Those are just sound. They're sounds. They're not patterns of drums or melodies or rhythms, right?
And more specifically for this upcoming project, are we able to use those?
Yeah. Yeah, you can use them limited. You know, I need to be a little more specific in my assignment. What I would say is that you need to have at least 5 original sounds that are audio files. But if you want to use a couple software instruments, you can. I'm not going to talk about them yet. We'll talk about them next week. But let me show you over here in Logic where the Apple loops are, so you just know where the devil lives and you don't go in there. Okay. If we go over here to the browser at the top, see my cursor? It says loop browser, okay? And if you're wondering what an Apple loop is, let me just go to the end of Brad's piece here. If I drag, for instance, I have to let me make a new track. Actually, I'll just drag it down to the emptiness here. So this is what an Apple loop is. It's like a little melody. Okay? And it might also be like a drum kit sound. So I can actually literally just start piling this shit up and, right? Next thing you know, I've got a whole piece constructed out of little audio files and MIDI loops that someone else made, okay? So this is what I don't want you to be doing in this class, right? I'm interested in the work you write, and I don't want to have to give you a 70 on a homework assignment because 30% of it goes to Apple Inc., okay? Does that make sense? So there's another thing in here too, and I'm actually really curious about this. There's this thing called the drummer, and you should also avoid this, okay? I'm gonna make a new track and I'm gonna choose the drummer, all right? Now I'm really curious if it's still racist and the way it was. I wonder if they've changed it. So this is this is the new version of Logic, and if you ask me, this is kind of, I don't know if you call it racist, but it's very stereotypical of people. Let me see if they changed it. Did they change this? I'm curious if they changed this because of the new version in Logic. So anyways, what I can do here, see how I just actually made this drum kit here? Library. Oh, they haven't fixed this. So this is what I'm talking about when I say racist, or if you choose over here, for instance, if I go down here and choose Motown, and I go to the drummer, I wonder if they have changed this. Up here, oh, okay, no. See, I'm under the genre of rock. If I go to R&B, they give the names and the people are more, so rock is going to be white guys named Max and Adam and Kyle and Logan. And then under hip hop, it's Antoine and Maurice, right? Like, it blows my mind that is in Logic. Anyways, I hate this thing. So what it is though, it literally is a algorithmic generator of a drum beats. So it literally just makes up drum beats. And so you can just drop a drum track right into your patch, and then suddenly you've got drums like that sound pretty good actually. And you can do some editing. You can add some other sounds to them. Like I can add a shaker. I can add claps. Anyway, so this is the other thing I want you to avoid using. All right, I'm not really interested in Kyle and Dez, the drummer. If you want to write drum beats, we're going to do a whole thing in this class on drum beats. So we'll do that then, and you'll get better at it by yourself, okay? So anyway, so just keep that in mind. In this assignment, though, I do want you to download sounds and use them, and you're free to download any individual sound. What I don't want are melodic phrases or patterns of rhythms and stuff like that are not yours, okay? And again, remember, I'm never going to tell you, man, you're really bad at drums, you get a D in that assignment, right? I mean, that's just not how it works. So what I really want is original work. And again, once you leave this class, you can sample all you want, right? Sample your brains out for all I care. But I want to know what you can do, not what Apple Inc. can do or what Ableton drum beats can do, okay? Or what Dez and Antoine can do on the drums, all right? Okay, anyway, so yeah, your next assignment then is to create a 1-minute project using audio files that you record and audio files, I mean, not necessarily you record, you can use original recordings and downloaded from the internet, okay? Now, if we go back to, I want to talk briefly, first of all, about file formats, okay? There are standard audio file formats, all right? And I'm still sharing, right? Good, okay. So the most common that we're gonna see are your MP3, right? And as you guys might know, an MP3 is a compressed audio format, meaning that the audio has actually been reduced in quality in order to make the files smaller, right? Now, if you ask me, MP3s are pretty good, and they don't sound that different, you know, but there are snobs out there who don't think so. And there is sound that is lost, right, from an MP3. If you ask me, there's really no reason for MP3s anymore. Our internet is so fast, and we have hard drives that are so huge that we don't really need them. I'm surprised we're not just using uncompressed audio at this point for everything. But you probably will most commonly see MP3s. And if you, for instance, go over to freesound.org, you can see that this file, for instance, is a .wav file, okay? And a .wav file is an uncompressed audio file. This is actually the Windows format for audio, right? And also, you might see .wav with an E on the end. These are the Apple formats. Apple, but they both work. You know, my PC and Mac can play any of these formats, right? M4A and MP4, these are other types of MP3s. In fact, both of them are actually for videos. Did you know that? So MP4, M4A is actually, but you see audio all the time because, as you know, most video comes with audio. And so there's an audio channel in the video, okay? Does that make sense? So, or sorry, there's an audio channel in, so there's a video channel in M4A. That's why it's called a video format. So an MP3 is just embedded in an M4A or an MP4. So you might see that. So if we go over, for instance, to Freesound, if I click on, say I want to download something like, these are, you know, it depends on what type of sound it is. But if I go over here to the right, you can see this says it's a WAV file, okay? And I don't know what the format is with this. Let's go back to our whales. Or I don't know if there's a format standard. Here's an AIFF, right? So all of these formats should work for you. And I wouldn't worry too much about what you choose. They should all work. There's another format also that I should mention because I actually just saw it called .FLAC. Right? And this is also a uncompressed audio format that is actually full quality audio, and it's used for various things. So you might see .flacs too. Any of these can be downloaded and brought into Logic, okay? So just be aware of that. You might get errors though in Logic. So if you download an audio file in Logic and it says this file doesn't match the format of your Logic project, do you want us to convert it? You can say yes, and then it will convert the file to match your project files, okay? So just keep that in mind. And it really depends on where you download things, but you know, these days, MP3s are pretty common, and obviously it matters how big the audio file is. So if I download, for instance, I find like a 30-minute track, 30-minute, let's see if anything pops up if we type in 30 minutes. Here's a 30-minute track, and so they're making it an MP3, okay? And the reasoning for that, of course, is that a 30-minute audio file is probably gonna be, I mean, anyone tell me how big MP3s are in comparison to AIFs? They're usually about 20% the size of an audio file, an uncompressed audio file. So you can see this is 66 megabytes, 68 megabytes. So uncompressed 30 minutes is gonna be 68 times 5, right? So 350 megabytes. But even now, you know, our internet is so fast, like 350 megabytes is nothing. It can download that in probably 5 seconds, 10 seconds, right? So just keep that in mind. All of these formats will work in Logic. Shouldn't have a problem bringing in any sort of audio file, okay? Anyways, let's take a look let's go back and just talk about some techniques here that could make Brad's project even better, okay?
Professor,
Yes, Alex?
I just realized that I didn't submit it the way you wanted to. I sent it as like an MP3 file instead of being able to open it.
Okay, are you allowed to submit twice or no?
I'm not sure.
I'm not either, actually. Let me go back. I might be able to like purge your assignment. You can, yeah, so if you'll notice here, I do want your audio. So yeah, I totally see that, Alex. So you or Ali, you sent me an MP3. I do want a .logic project, okay? And I'm glad this came up too, because some people were emailing me, depending on the size of your project, Logic might, or Google might compress it into a zip file, and that's totally fine, okay? If your project is small, it won't get compressed into a zip file. But yeah, let me see if I can delete this. I don't know, maybe I can. Do me a favor, Ali, try and upload it again. And then if you can't, just email it to me, okay? Yeah, you there?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. That's a good question though. I bet there's a.
How do I export it though as a zip?
You don't. All you do is literally drag the logic.x project. So like you can see this project.
Also, like what was saved on the desktop as I worked?
Yeah, you can just send
Okay.
me the entire thing like Brad did here, right?
Okay.
Okay, and this is perfect too. The name of this, it says 30-second project, and then his name. The name is really useful because when I download all these things, I end up with a bunch of files, right? And if they all say assignment 1, it's kind of difficult to manage, and I have to figure out whose is whose, all right? Okay, so, but let's talk about, we have 20 more minutes left, so let me talk about some strategies for making these more interesting. Now, one thing really great about Brad's project here is that you'll notice he never went more than about 4 bars before, or 4 or 5 repeats before something changed, right? And I can't stress that enough, like, you know, you really can't repeat the same thing for a minute. It's just boring, right? We're going to get bored. Anyone's going to get bored from that. So you really do want to change things up. And one thing good about this is that you can see that he's repeated some things, but they do change, right? So for instance, this starts here, and then by measure 5 here, it changes to something else, right? So that constant variation is really more interesting to the ear, right? I mean, if he did nothing but repeat this over and over, you know, if this just repeated incessantly for the entire 30 seconds, I'm going to be bored, and you guys are going to be bored too, right? It's like once we've heard something 4 times, it's time to move on to something else, or to make some variation to that, right? Now, one thing you have to do on your assignment, your next assignment, is to use some panning, all right? So one thing that he doesn't have in here is any panning. Notice that all the panning knobs down here are all right in the center, okay? And remember, panning to me is like, you know, if you were staging a play, you wouldn't have all the characters standing in the middle, right? You'd spread them across the stage, and you should do the same thing in your audio projects. So it might be really cool to have these things change up a little bit. And one of the best ways of doing that is to use multiple tracks doing the same thing. So what I can do is, so say I want to take this sound down here. Okay, and I want to give it some variation. So what I'm going to do is actually use this button right here that says duplicate track. See that button? I'm trying to get my cursor big. There it is. If I duplicate this track, I can now actually do this. I can pan that one left, pan that one right, and then grab some of these and bring them down into the other channel. Oh, let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, So now what I'm doing is kind of an alternating of audio files across the spectrum. So now listen to it. Right? So that's just one way of creating some variation. Like I can pan them differently. I could also duplicate this again and maybe have one panned in the center. Maybe sometimes this is in the center, sometimes it's left, sometimes it's right. Okay? And I'm using these 3 tracks together all to create this one sound. Okay, so panning is incredibly essential, and I will start harping on panning. If I see, you know, I'm always going to tell you to use the stereo field and, you know, use the whole stage. And if I see no panning, it's like, come on, man, right? So let's start panning some of our tracks so that we have some variation, right? Now here you can see it's a little different. If he wanted to pan these individual sounds, so if you wanted to, for instance, solo, let me unsolo that, solo this. So if you wanted to solo these, you might have to actually do this, where you would make 3 new tracks, pan one left, pan one right, and I would drag this down here. In fact, I'm option dragging to make copies and select all these, option drag down, okay? And then I'm going to do this. Remember, I can resize these if I go to their beginning. So maybe this one will be here, and then this one will be the first track, and then this one will be this one. See what I'm doing? So now I'm dispersing them again across different places in the spectrum, okay? So doing some variation and panning is really nice and useful, okay? You might also, too, do this, Brad. You could go in here, let me unsolo this, and actually resize some of these files. So instead of this being exactly the same every time, sometimes some of them are a little shorter or longer, right? And all it's gonna do is just create a little bit of variation of the sounds so that it sounds a little more organic, right? There's less of the exact same thing over and over. Okay, but I mean, again, I'm not complaining. This is great in terms of variation, does a lot of variation and is pretty cool, all right? Now I wanna point out something to you all as well. You're free to start, and this is what my video is gonna be about for tomorrow. You're free to start using effects plugins, okay? And let me explain to where those go. As you know, most of the settings for these individual tracks are global, right? That means that every sound on this track is gonna get the effects that I put in it. So for instance, if I pan this track left, everything on that track will get panned left, right? And that's why I made new tracks when I did this down here, okay? So what I'm gonna do is, I can also do that with effects. If you look over, and remember the channel strip, so I might actually rename these too. I could put this 2, put a 3 on here, okay? I'm gonna go down to channel air fryer beep 3, and I'm gonna notice that the channel strip is right here, right? I'm gonna go up here where it says audio effects. And right now you're free to use any of these you want, so just experiment with them. Maybe I wanna change the pitch of something, okay? So I'm gonna go to the pitch shifter. I'm gonna actually turn the volume all the way up and change the semitones or whatever, or not the volume, sorry, the mix. So that means that I'm gonna make it completely change the sound, what the main output is, okay? Or how much of this sound is being manipulated from that, okay? So listen to how this sounds now. Okay, so I changed the pitch. It's kind of a funky sound, but I can also add something like a reverb. So let me put a reverb in here, and I'm going to talk about reverb in my video because you need to use reverb on your assignment. When I open a plugin, these are called plugins, okay? They show up, you can see there's a list here of plugins. So right now I have the pitch shifter and I have the chroma verb. The chroma verb has pulled up here, it's opened up, and listen to what it does. It adds reverb, right? And that gives it some distance and some space. So the sound is first getting pitch shifted, and then it's being passed to the reverb. And I can literally just pile up more effects. So maybe I'll put on a something crazy like the ring shifter, okay? So you can see that I can now, I've really altered this sound. I can also just open these up. So this is the ring shifter. If I want to close it, I just click on this button here at the top. If I want to bypass it, which means turn it off, I push this off and on button, okay? That's going to turn the ring shifter on and off. But if I close this, all I'm doing is minimizing the ring shifter and putting it away for now. I can always reopen these by clicking on them, okay? So these are what are called effects plugins, and we will use these a bunch. We're going to learn about reverb and delay this week. And next week, we're going to learn about EQ, which is equalization, which is a very powerful tool for editing sounds. But anyways, this is where the effects plugins go. And again, I'm going to cover all this in my video, and then you'll have daily 10s about these, so you'll understand this better. But your next assignment, you need to make use of reverb and delay in your tracks, okay? And panning, okay? Any questions right now? I feel like it's so funny. I can never judge whether you're following me or you have any questions. I can't see your faces, obviously. So anyone? Any questions? None at all? Okay. So using effects plugins is really interesting, really useful. I really recommend you do that. Remember, I can't stress enough, your assignment is due today, right? Don't forget in Logic to save correctly, okay? And your daily 10 covered this a little bit too. I want a package, right? And you must check this box that says audio files, because if you don't, your audio files won't get copied into the folder, correct? Okay? And remember, when you turn it in, you're turning in the entire project, meaning the .aif file, okay? Anyways, so no questions about this at all in Logic, yeah? There's another thing too. Let's take a look at a couple other things you can do to make this more interesting, all right? Obviously, you know, I really recommend to you guys, like, one of the problems with pro audio is that, I mean, any sound in the world can become your audio source, right? And so in a way, trying to be creative can be hard. I mean, probably some of you, you're going to struggle in this class a little bit with every week I have to come up with a new project and be creative, and that's hard, right? One of the best things to do to manage that is to limit your creativity a little bit. It'll help you it'll help you write pieces that are more effective, and it'll also help you manage all the possibilities, okay? Because again, the problem with electronic music is that any sound in the world is possible and can be an instrument and can be used. So it might be really useful for you to say, I'm going to only use the sound of crickets in this project, okay? Now crickets is a really limited thing because it's so high pitched, but you could do tons of effects with it. Maybe I'm going to limit this piece only to the sound of my keys and my Tupperware, right? Or just a couple of things. So limiting yourself or setting boundaries on your projects for yourself can be a good way of like giving yourself a direction, okay? So you might think about that a little bit. If any of you are struggling with ideas, always email me too. I'm happy to talk to you about anything, right? Again, I really don't want you to stress. You know, it's unlikely anyone in this class is going to write the next Grammy-winning song. And so let's not stress about it and just, you know, we're using creativity as a tool to do these projects, but they don't have to be the best thing you ever made, right? Because you have to get them done in time, obviously, to turn them in. So, you know, you just do the assignments. I mean, I get it too. Like, I'm a perfectionist too, but, you know, we just have to get them done, of course, right? So do you have any questions about that? I mean, limiting yourself can really help a lot. And so I do it all the time, you know, like I have a piece, for example, where I said, I'm only going to use, it was about Nirvana. And so the music, everything in the electronic track is generated from Nirvana's music only. Okay. And so that's a good way of kind of really limiting yourself to specific things. So anyways, do you guys have any questions? Anyone have any specific questions? All right, so once again, just to reiterate, of course, every time you have a question and you're wondering when an assignment is due or something, please go to our Google Classroom, okay? Because it will always be posted. You just go to the assignment and here my daily 10s are coming in. I can't, all these windows in the way, I can't go back. Okay, so your daily 10s will be posted, your assignments for the week. Oh, I moved this on accident into week 2. So anyway, so your assignments are posted here and then what we're doing in class. Remember, every Monday we are meeting on Zoom for the class period to do some sort of lesson, all right? So the things, again, just to reiterate a little bit, in your homework assignment, you need to manage your main outputs. So the clipping of your stereo output, right, needs to be under control. You need to make sure there's lots of variation over the course of 1 minute. One thing I really recommend is finding some sort of long pad-ish sound to kind of glue everything together, okay? And what I mean by that is something like this. So if I go to freesound.org, a perfect example of this would be like Midnight Thunder. I don't know. Let's see what we find. So ambient noises like this that just kind of play all the time are great. Like, it's a great way of having something to glue the rest of your project onto, right? So it's almost like you have a drone and then over top of that drone, you put other objects. And it can be a really great way of giving yourself a baseline to work with, right? It's almost like if you were creating collage with pictures, right? You would put them on a piece of paper. And think about that piece of paper as being your environment. Everything else lives in that environment. So if I start with an example like seashore, right? I'll have a nice, maybe this is really quiet in the background, but it's kind of the glue for your entire 1 minute project. Everything is glued onto the sound of the seashore, right? Or go out to the lakeshore with your phone and record the lake and use that in your project. And it literally plays the entire minute and never changes. It's like, it's just there in the background behind all the other things you add in the track, okay? So I find that to be really useful in terms of writing tracks. Like it's just really, it's kind of like, it's what we call a drone, okay? A drone is like a continuous sound playing in the background of a track or something like that. That's kind of gluing the mix together, all right? Anyway, so yes, and I will see you, of course, on Wednesday and Friday in class. I think that went pretty well this last week. And if you have any questions, please email me about your assignment. I will be more specific in here too. I'll probably add a few more things that I'm expecting you to do, and just maybe even some pointers for making something interesting, okay? All right. Any questions? None at all? Okay, I will see you on Wednesday then, and I'll see you on Friday. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, okay?
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.